Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to tackle the subject of John Lennon's lyrics covering the Beatle period. So I've previously done a video on a discussion of Paul McCartney's lyrics, Beatle period, and a discussion of George Harrison's lyrics, and now we're tackling John Lennon. Quite a bit to get through, and quite interesting as I was going through the tracks trying to select candidates. Some of them work better as words apart from the music, and some really you have to really have the music to appreciate the words, and some of them, the words, the music, George Martin's production, all three of them come together. And so I know it's a little difficult looking at song lyrics in isolation, but it's quite a fun exercise, and I've enjoyed doing it because it's got, if nothing else, it's got me back listening to the tracks. And for example, I just listened to Anthology 2 in the last 48 hours, and I've also just listened to Revolver on mono, and it's always good to revisit albums, and Mystery Tour I played on mono as well. Always good to revisit albums that one hasn't necessarily played in a while. So in common with McCartney, Lennon started off the early 60s writing fairly standard boy-girl love songs, nothing too sophisticated, and that was enough for them to have hits. And I think the first example of Lennon writing an introspective song is that There's a Place, with this superb illustration from Alan Aldridge from this book. If those of you who didn't get the book from the last time, it's the Beatles Illustrated lyrics, edited by Alan Aldridge. This edition combined two original volumes which came out in, I think, 69 and 70, but this combined hardback is 1990, and I found it secondhand in one of those bookshops on Charing Cross Road, and it wasn't too expensive. So there's a place where I can go when I feel low, when I feel blue, and it's my mind, and there's no time when I'm alone. Quite interesting that he was already thinking of exploring his own consciousness. And it's also interesting that the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, wrote a song the same year, about 6 months after this one, called In My Room, which has a very similar concept and is actually one of the Beach Boys' best ever songs, I think, because it opens with there's a world where I can go and show my secrets to, or something, in my room. And it reminded me of that song, of this song, There's a Place. So that's on the very first Beatles album, which I thought was interesting. And then you've got you have to wait till Beatles for Sale for another non-love song as such, even though I'm a Loser is kind of semi, because I think he's complaining about losing She Was a Girl in a Million, My Friend. So it's also about relationships, but it's also, the chorus is not much to do with, well, it's partly to do with failed romance as well, but although I laugh and I act like a clown beneath this where is it? Can't find it. Although I laugh and I act like a clown, beneath this mask I'm wearing a frown. My tears are falling like rain from the sky. Is it for her or myself that I cry? I'm a loser and I lost someone who's near to me. I'm a loser and I'm not what I appear to be. So that's quite interesting. And I think in general on Beatles for Sale, there's a couple of other examples of Lennon's lyrics, like No Reply, I think is quite a sophisticated lyric. And I think someone described it at the time as the first song which actually resolved itself completely lyrically. So that was, although Lennon admitted in an interview that he never used the telephone as a kid, it just wasn't part of the growing up in Liverpool. So when he says, I called you on the phone, I think that's it's just to make a song. I don't think he actually used to call anyone, boy or girl, apparently. And then we moved to Help, and by this time he's becoming a bit more introspective again, but he's masking that by having a fast commercial #1 hit single. So even if you hear the lyrics, you don't necessarily take them in, and you just think they're happy-go-lucky, although the underlying cry is John crying for help, even though you could argue, you know, how much help was he really crying for? He was in the middle of enormous fame and success and had all the money and material things he could wish for. So I'm not sure how miserable he was at this period, but anyway, he's saying, when I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now those days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I've opened up the doors. So I think maybe with material success becomes a degree of self-reflection and thinking, you know, was it all worth it, and what's the next step after achieving this? And obviously they would discover various other things as the 60s progressed. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away from the same album is a very mature love song, and one could say pretty much definitely influenced by what Dylan was doing at the time. Dylan was coming up with you know, solo acoustic numbers as early as 63, or even on his first album, 62, but he hit the top quality in with Freewheeling and Another Side Of. Times they were changing those 3 albums, so that was influence, I think. And then I find Ticket to Ride an interesting, a little bit of a step away from the standard love song, because you don't really know what he means, but she's got a ticket to ride. What does it mean? And she don't care. She's obviously going away somewhere, but where is she going? And you know, there's all kind of rumours about what the lyrics are about, so that's quite fun. Off the following album, Rubber Soul, we've got Nowhere Man, which again he's talking about could be talking about himself actually, but he's definitely sympathising with the plight of the lonely person, as opposed to just writing a standard love song. And he's a real nowhere man sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me? So Nowhere Man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Nowhere Man, the world is at your command. So I think that's, and it's a decent song as well, obviously. And Rubber Soul, Lennon was absolutely on fire. And the word, although it could be credited with Paul, I think they jointly wrote it. I'll give credit to most of the words to John. And this is ahead of its time because it predates the Summer of Love by a good 18 months. And say the word and you'll be free. Say the word and be like me. Say the word I'm thinking of. Have you heard? The word is love. In the beginning I misunderstood. Now I understand the word is good. I just think it's, yeah, as I say, 18 months ahead of its time, and a very good message, which they were to continue for most of the 60s, actually. We've got Girl, which I was reading in the Playboy interview, contained a dig at Catholicism, and I was thinking, where would that come from? And it was the line which she told when she was young, that pain would lead to pleasure. That apparently was a dig at the Catholic Church, because they say, you know, in order for you to get to paradise, you have to go through hell on earth. And so that line was apparently aimed at the Catholic Church partly. And then a man must break his back to earn his day of leisure. I think these are glorious lines. And Lennon admitted later that this song wasn't about anyone in particular other than the dream girl who would turn out to be Yoko for John. And later on in his solo career, he would write a mature version of this song called Woman, which was dedicated to Yoko and to all women, he said. So this is like an early test version for that, in a way, you could say. And then In My Life, from the same album, staggering amount of Lennon classics. I even missed out Norwegian Wood. So many. Norwegian Wood, another very clever song with great words, mysterious words. In My Life, a lot of people, including my friend Andrew Brooks, says he'd like to have this one at his funeral. And there's a very good picture here to go with In My Life. And it's got, you can see John in the white suit there, and you can see Paul and George and Ringo and some old lady and a few other people. There's no Yoko in there. And this was obviously drawn late 60s, so I'm not sure who those other people are meant to be, but obviously the artist either chose not to put Yoko in there, or it was maybe slightly predating Yoko when she did this picture, or he or she did this picture. So that was in my life, and the words, there are places I'll remember all my life. Though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone and some remain. All those places had their moments with lovers and friends I can still recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. It's absolutely superb. Moving through this book, and it really is wonderful to see John's lyrics and Paul's lyrics illustrated with these, and a great illustration for I'm Only Sleeping, which, again, broadening the subject matter of Beatles songs, is covering the subject of, you know, being lazy and hanging around the house or hanging around in bed and not getting up, and when I wake up early in the morning, left my head, I'm still yawning. When I'm in the middle of a dream, stay in bed, float upstream. Please don't wake me, please don't shake me. Leave me where I am, I'm only sleeping. Everybody seems to think I'm lazy. I don't mind, I think they're crazy. Running everywhere at such a speed till they find there's no need. And he would also revisit that lyrical theme with I'm So Tired on the White Album. And then I just want to mention this in his own right and span it in the works, 2 books which Lennon wrote in the mid-60s, early 64, 65 they came out. And I just want to read you the Fat Budgie. He flies about the room sometimes and sits upon my bed, and if he's really happy, he does it on my head. He's on a diet now, you know, from eating far too much. They say if he gets fatter, he'll have to wear a crutch. It would be funny, wouldn't it? A budgie on a stick. Imagine all the people laughing till they're sick. So that's my budgie Jeffrey, fat and yellow too. I love him more than Daddy, and I'm only 32. I thought, apart from being amusing, I thought that was interesting that it contained 2 lines which would appear in 2 of his solo tracks. One, Imagine All the People, appearing in Imagine, and I'm Only 32 would appear in I'm the Greatest, which he gave to Ringo. So I thought that was quite interesting. Worth picking up. This only cost 95 cents at the time. Bargain. Contained both books. Not sure where I picked that up from. Tomorrow Never Knows. This is a song which I think the words on their own are quite interesting, but inspired by Timothy Leary, Book of the Dead. But I think in conjunction with the music and the drums and George Martin's production, it's more effective. But it's interesting. We're entering the period of pretty heavy psychedelia here. Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream. It is not dying, it is not dying. Lay down all thoughts, surrender to the void. It is shining, that you may see the meaning of within. It is speaking, that love is all and love is everyone. It is knowing. Yeah, pretty hypnotic. And the Strawberry Fields Forever, widely regarded as one of his lyrical classics. He's asked about it in the Playboy interviews. And he says, let's say it one way. I was always hip, man. I was hip in kindergarten. I was different from others then. I was different all my life. It's not a case of then he took acid and woke up, or then he had a marijuana joint and woke up. It's not that at all. Strawberry Fields is my attempt at expressing that. The second line goes, no one, I think, is in my tree. Well, what I was trying to say in that line is nobody seems to be as hip as me. Therefore, I must be crazy or a genius. It's that same problem I had when I was 5. There is something wrong with me because I seem to see things that other people don't see. Am I crazy or am I a genius? I don't think I'm either. Crazy or genius don't really mean anything anymore. I don't literally mean genius as the things we deify, but as the spirit of genius that can come through anybody at any given time. And if there is such a thing, well, I'm going to be one. It was like, if there is a leader of the Beatles, I'm it. If there ain't, then it's a democracy. It sort of covers all angles. So the line says, no one I think is in my tree. I mean, it must be high or low. What I'm saying in my own secure way is nobody seems to understand where I'm coming from. I seem to see things in a different way from most people. I mean, I would see teachers and fully sense the underlying stupidity or surfaceness of the situation. So at 13, 14, I would think, yes, this guy is an arsehole and I'm seeing his subconscious. I can read his mind. I'm picking up things that he doesn't even know exist. Meaning I was always so psychic or intuitive and poetic or whatever you want to call it. I was always seeing things in a hallucinatory way that always saw beyond the mask. And it's scary when you're a child because there's no one to relate to. Neither my auntie nor my friends nor anybody could ever see it. And it's very, very scary. So it's interesting that he talks about being a kind of psychic visionary or something as a child, not just when he became a Beatle or when he took drugs. So that, and but this song is a glorious psychedelic song, you know, with or without drugs. You can listen to it totally straight and think it's absolutely brilliant, and no doubt if you're under the influence of something it sounds good as well, but it's by no means necessary. Lucy in the Sky, similar, probably got derided over the years, this song, because it's connected with LSD, because the initials of Lucy in the Sky with Diamond spell LSD, but John swears to this day that it was a painting painted by Julian of his friend Lucy at school, who happened to be in the sky with a few diamonds floating around it. So that, but it's just beautiful poetic lyrics. Yes, influenced by psychedelia. Yes, influenced by LSD probably. But they stand alone as words. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly. A girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over your head. Look for the girl with the sun in her eyes, and she's gone. Brilliant. Yeah, I need to keep going because we've got a lot to get through. Day in the Life, well, no words necessary. This song is co-written with Paul, so I won't give John the sole credit for it, but he did come up with that verse and those superb lines. I heard the news today, oh boy, 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. Though the holes were rather small, they had to count them all, and now they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. I think it's just absolutely sensational words, and it was just taken from a newspaper report about there being 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. I'm the Walrus. I mentioned this in an earlier video. It's got great free-form words, but as a standalone lyrics, if I was to read them out to you, they wouldn't make much sense. So go away, listen to the track, you know, appreciate the words by all means, but I think as poetry it doesn't work that well, but it is sensational, and the way it goes combines with the tune makes it one of Lennon's masterpieces. Revolution has been talked about a lot over the years for its political stance. The Beatles were not really taking much of a political stance up until around this point, and Lennon wanted to put it out as a single, and the Beatles sort of nixed that idea, and it ended up on the B-side of Hey Jude. But what I like about this period of John's life is he was, you know, he was all about peace and not about violence. And later on in the early 70s, he'd go through a slight period with Jerry Rubin, Abbie Hoffman, of being not quite so peaceful. But I love words from this one, like if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you won't going to make it with anyone anyhow. You know, there's other lines, all I can tell, but if you want money for people with minds that hate, all I can tell is, brother, you'll have to wait. I just love those lines. Didn't go down very well with the leftist movement in '68. They were looking for more kind of confrontational, you know, knock down the establishment lyrics, and they got that. They got Street Fighting Man from the Stones, which was a bit more au courant and a bit more less peaceful, should we say. Happiness is a Warm Gun from the White Album, and here you're getting just wonderfully amusing and complex words, and which probably don't mean too much, but again, listen to it in the context of the song. I mean, I will read out the first bit because it's so good. She's not a girl who misses much. She's well acquainted with the touch of the velvet hand like a lizard on a window pane. The man in the crowd with the multicoloured mirrors on his hobnail boots, lying with his eyes while his hands are busy working overtime. The soap impression of his wife, which he ate and donated to the National Trust. Those lyrics were apparently put together with Derek Taylor after a trip. And the guy with the multicoloured mirrors on his hobnail boots was a guy who went around football matches with mirrors on his boots so he could see up the skirts of girls, apparently, according to Derek Taylor. With Julia is probably the most personal song he'd written. or one of the most personal songs he'd written up until that time. Came out in the White Album, half dedicated to Yoko, half dedicated to his mother, and it's absolutely beautiful, even as poetry stand alone. Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia. Julia, Julia, ocean child, calls me, so I sing the song of love, Julia. Julia, seashell eyes, windy smile, calls me, so I sing the song of love, Julia. Her hair of floating sky is shimmering, glimmering in the sun. Julia, Julia, morning moon, touch me, so I sing the song of love, Julia. When I cannot sing my heart, I can only speak my mind, Julia. Julia, sleeping sand, silent cloud, touch me, so I sing the song of love, Julia. Just absolutely beautiful, and he plays it just alone in the acoustic guitar. No accompaniment from anyone, just him. Ballad of John and Yoko is a pretty succinct and amusing depiction of his when he got married and made a lightning trip to Vienna, eating chocolate cake in a bag. Men from the press said, "We wish you success." He looked like two gurus in drag. I think there's just one more song I want to cover. Lennon remembers. Also, he talks about certain songs in here. For example, he talks about "Girl" as well, I think, in here. Girl is real. There's no such thing as the girl. She was a dream, but the words are all right. It's about was she taught when she was young that pain would lead to pleasure. Did she understand and all that? There's a sort of philosophy quotes. It was reasonable. I was thinking about it when I wrote it. It wasn't just a song. It was about that. And it was about that girl that happened to turn out to be Yoko in the end, but the one that a lot of us were looking for. There's many songs I forget that I do like. I like Across the Universe too, which brings us on to this. He actually thinks it's the best he wrote. And it's certainly amongst the best lyrics. And although certain critics such as Ian MacDonald slagged it off, I think most people agree it's an absolute classic. And again, survives without the music. Words are flying out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither while they pass, they slip away across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me. Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's going to change my world. Glorious song on which to finish Lennon's lyrical content for the Beatles. It obviously was recorded in '68 but came out on the final Beatles album. Look forward to discussing John's solo career in the next volume of John Lennon, because I think his solo career is obviously, there's more self-expression and some probably more moving lyrics on the whole versus his Beatle career. But his Beatles career is pretty important because there's certain exploratory themes and stuff going through the music and covering subjects which made it very interesting, not just to have the Beatles writing love songs, but to explore all kinds of things such as loneliness and searching for the truth and all the rest of the things the Beatles were so good at showing us or trying to show us. So that was John Lennon as a lyricist in the Beatles. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.